What's up, family? Hey, this is going to be a very difficult and challenging topic, but it's one that we have to have. A little more than 25 years ago, I came across a book that completely flipped my world upside down. It shook me to my core. It took me a while to understand it, to go through the process, but reading this book was critical to my growth and development. This is this book right here, Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. Man, get this book. Again, Codependent No More. She had a follow up book, um, Beyond Codependency. But man, this first book, Codependent No More. It was like the first time I ever heard the term codependent. Codependency is kind of vague, and there's so many different definitions and terms for it. For me, codependency started. And again, before I even get onto that, codependency isn't the problem, it's the result of a problem. Say it again. Codependency is not a problem, it is the result of a problem. Okay? Many people say that codependency should actually be changed. The term codependency issues should actually be changed to self-love deficit disorder. I'm saying it again. Codependency at its core is nothing more than self-love deficit disorder. For me, my journey into self-love deficit disorder or to codependency issues started as a kid. And we all have different experiences. Some of us, your experience started in an abusive relationship, whatever the case may be, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whatever. For me, my issues, my journey started as a kid. Grew up in a chaotic family, and I use the word chaotic lightly. It was hellish. My father murdered my mom when I was 2. Was in the system for a minute. And then my sisters and I were finally put in the custody of my aunt, who was religious and verbally abusive, physically abusive, emotionally abusive. And so that launched me into my path of self-love deficit disorder, of not loving myself, not learning how to love myself. And so I grew up believing that, constantly been told that, I was stupid, dumb, wasn't going to amount to anything, would be in prison for the rest of my life, wouldn't see 18 because I would be dead, or, I had the devil in me, and just a bunch of crazy stuff like that. And then at 6 years old, being molested by a couple of times by religious people, just reiterated to me that I wasn't worthy of love. It just reiterated to me that, man, God don't even love you. God don't even find you worthy to protect. You know what I mean? God don't even care about you. And so that just showed me, man, what my family is saying must be true, that I am stupid. I am nothing. I don't matter. I'm not going to amount to anything. Man, I must have the devil in me if God's allowing all this stuff to happen to me. You know what I mean? And so I grew up not loving myself because I didn't find myself worthy of love. After all, look at all the stuff that I went through. You know what I mean? Man, we were beat down verbally, emotionally, physically, you know what I mean? It was hell, you know? And so I didn't know how to love myself. And so I got into relationships looking for love, you know, and looking for people to do all those things for me that I didn't do for myself. I was looking for validation. I was looking to be accepted. I was looking to be cherished because I didn't know how to do that stuff for myself. And so when I got in those relationships and everything was good, I was like, okay, cool, this is great. But when the relationships start going bad, it reiterated the fact that, man, you ain't loving. I'm not loving, but you ain't lovable, Elijah. Nobody's gonna love you. Nobody's gonna care about you. Nobody's gonna cherish you. Nobody's gonna want to be with you. Stay with me. I'm going somewhere. In order for me to resolve those issues, in order for me to eliminate my codependency issues, in order for me to resolve my self love deficit disorder, I had to go back to the root cause. I had to go back to the events that put me on this path. It's going to be different for each of us. Understand that. For me, again, it was my childhood. I had to go back to all these events. I had to acknowledge these events and accept it. And what I mean by accept it, man, it is what it is. I can't change it. You know what I mean? I can't change the fact that my father murdered my mom. I can't change the fact that was in the system for a minute. I can't change the fact that we were put in the care of my aunt who was verbally, physically, and emotionally abusive. Can't change the fact that I was sexually assaulted twice. I can't change those things. So I had to learn to accept it. It is what it is. Then I had to learn to forgive everybody involved, including myself, because of how I responded to all of those situations. First, I had to accept it for what it was. I had to learn to forgive everyone. Then I had to learn to love everyone. I had to take love to every one of those situations. I had to put love in every one of those people or attach love to every one of those people. I had to get rid of the judgment that I had attached to those people and replace it with love. Love is the key. You got to go through the process. You have to accept it for what it is. You have to forgive. And you have to apply love. When I learned to do that, I no longer had shame. See, because before, because of all this stuff, I was filled with shame. I hated the fact that my family was who they were. I legally changed my name because I didn't want to be associated with the family. I joined the military to move as far away from the family as I could because of my shame. Because of my shame, I took on certain coping mechanisms to avoid dealing with these issues. But once I learned to accept things for the way they were, once I learned to forgive everyone, including myself, and then once I learned to apply love, there was no more shame, there was no more judgment. now all of these coping mechanisms, all these destructive patterns of how I lived my life were all gone. And because those things disappeared, the self love deficit disorder was no longer there because I applied love. I learned to love myself. I learned to love myself. And when I learned to love myself, I no longer had self love deficit disorder. I no longer had codependency issues because I didn't need people to love me like that. Yeah, we all want to be loved. We all want to be cherished. We all want to be embraced. But I didn't have to go into relationships looking for that because I knew how to love myself. I knew how to cherish myself. I knew how to value myself. And so I no longer needed people to do those things for me. And regardless of what people did and how they responded to me, I still had self love. My self love wasn't dependent on what anybody else did anymore. My self love wasn't dependent on whether anybody wanted to be in a relationship with me or what people thought about me. My hope and prayer is that you find the courage to go back to the root cause of whatever situation occurred that led you to begin to not loving yourself, that led you to begin the process of thinking that you weren't worthy of love. Because that is ultimately the problem. Everything else was built upon that situation or those situations. You have to learn that you got to go back to the root cause. Once you get to the root cause, three things you have to do, regardless of what your codependency looks like. There's three things that you have to do. Every single one of us have three things that we have to do. We have to accept it for what it is. We have to forgive.